The acrid scent of cheap whiskey and the jarring wail of long, cool woman in a black dress will forever be interwoven with the moment I discovered my wife, Luna, in the throes of betrayal, the melody mocking the scene unfolding in my cherished Silas Merrick rocking chair. Melodies often forge an indelible link with our recollections. I'm certain I'll never hear that song again without recalling that particular rocking chair. It was a bespoke creation meticulously fashioned by Silas Merrick before his passing, and it cost my father a significant sum, 20,000 credits, over 2 decades ago. Far from being merely a chair, it stands as a breathtaking piece of art, crafted from lustrous Clara walnut, expertly sculpted, and remarkably comfortable. Its polished surface gleamed even in the dim light, and the smooth, ergonomic curves invited repose. Despite my father's shortcomings, this chair was the sole item of substantial value he bequeathed to me, a tangible link to a complicated past, and I cherish it still. Upon returning to my Willow Creek estate, the thumping bass and resonant guitar arpeggios of a song I didn't recognize vibrated through the very foundations of the house. It wasn't typically to my taste, yet it was undeniably impressive, a powerful arrangement swelling through the halls. The scent of an unfamiliar, musky cologne hung faintly in the air, clashing with the familiar aroma of our home. Following the insistent sound, I entered the family room, shrugging off my jacket, a weary sigh escaping my lips. My mind was set on reclining in my cherished chair with a cold brew, perhaps even spending some quality time with Luna. She had been somewhat irritable recently, distant, her phone a constant companion, and it had been almost 2 weeks since we truly shared a moment, a quiet conversation or a simple touch. Stepping into the family room, the world tilted on its axis, and I froze. There was Luna, unclothed, her body glistening under the soft lamplight, deeply, intimately engaged with Marcus, my bandmate, in the Silas Merrick rocking chair. The sight hit me like a physical blow. Both were using my favorite chair, and one was my estranged wife. I wasn't sure which transgression incensed me more. My thoughts raced, a chaotic blur. Why is she with him? Good heavens, they're synchronized to the song's beat. Is this a performance? A horrifying realization struck me. Thank goodness it's not rap, or Marcus might have strained his back. Marcus, with a grotesque ingenuity, was cleverly utilizing the chair's specific design, its low-slung seat and sturdy rockers, to his advantage for leverage, his movements precise and unsettlingly rhythmic. A fleeting, almost absurd thought crossed my mind in that moment of profound shock. Did Silas Merrick ever envision his creations being used in this manner? If they break that chair, I'll become completely unhinged. The idea of my treasured heirloom being desecrated in such a base way mingled with the searing pain of betrayal. I remained motionless, a statue of disbelief, for what felt like an eternity, though in reality it was about a minute and a half, until Marcus's eyes, glazed with a mixture of lust and exertion, suddenly snapped open and met mine. He flinched, a spasm of horror crossing his face, and awkwardly attempted to disengage from Luna in the chair, a move as graceless as it was belated. Luna's eyes fluttered open a moment later, registering my presence with a gasp that was quickly stifled. I stood paralyzed, uncertain of how to proceed, every instinct screaming to lash out, to scream, to smash something. Yet, a colder, more calculating part of my brain took over. Confronting them would only exacerbate the situation, drawing unwelcome press scrutiny that would dissect every ugly detail. It would jeopardize my involvement in the band's prospects, a career built on years of hard work. So I did nothing. I simply turned and walked away, the melody of Long Cool Woman now a sinister echo in my ears, heading towards the master suite. My movements felt stiff, robotic, as I buttoned a fresh shirt, meticulously aligning each button as if my sanity depended on it. I caught Luna's reflection in the mirror. Her face pale, her hair disheveled. "Where are you going?" Luna inquired, her voice a strained whisper, deliberately avoiding eye contact. I tried to offer a smile, a mask of indifference, but failed, my lips merely twitching. I simply stared at her, my gaze devoid of warmth. Luna, a former youthful sensation, now a dazzling celebrity, her face gracing magazine covers and billboards, was my wife, and, it seemed, no longer either. "We didn't mean for it to happen," she stated, her voice trembling slightly as she sat on the edge of the bed while I began filling a travel bag with clothes, moving with a detached precision. Once I had sufficient attire, a few shirts, a couple of pairs of jeans, I dragged the bag to my dresser and, with a deliberate slowness that bordered on defiance, added underwear and socks. "That's it?" Luna questioned, her voice rising slightly, tinged with disbelief. "You're not even going to say anything?" I ignored her, my focus fixed on the simple act of packing. Despite anticipating a volcanic fury, an explosion of righteous anger, I merely felt an overwhelming sense of weariness and vanquishment, as though all the air had been forcefully expelled from my lungs, leaving me hollowed out and spent. "Damn it, Alex, say something," she yelled, her voice breaking. "What do you want me to say?" I snapped, dropping the travel bag, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. "Is there a manual for discovering your wife and one of your oldest friends are having an affair?" Huh, should I have been prepared for this? Maybe you could have offered some hints, a small brochure perhaps. I was drained, mentally and emotionally exhausted, and simply yearned to escape. I dragged my travel bag past Luna, retrieved some toiletries from the bathroom, avoiding the mirror, and loaded the bag into my Escalade. Inside the house, Marcus was lacing his shoes, still seated in the rocking chair, his face a mottled mix of shame and discomfort. "Look, Alex," Marcus began, his voice raspy, but I cut him off, my words flat and devoid of emotion. "I just want my chair," I stated, my gaze fixed on the gleaming Clara walnut. Then picking it up with a possessive grip, I gestured towards my Grammy Awards and framed albums, glittering testaments to a life that now felt utterly fake. "You and Luna can box on my stuff, okay? Ship it to my mother's house. I'll handle things from there." "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, a hint of desperation in his voice. "You're the primary negotiator for the upcoming deals. You're not leaving, are you?" I disregarded him completely, my focus singular. I loaded the chair into the Escalade along with some guitars, my fingers brushing against the familiar fretboards, and started to get in. "Alex," Marcus pleaded, a new urgency in his tone. "Please let me explain." I took a deep breath, the stale air feeling heavy in my lungs. "So, what is it that you didn't mean to happen?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "You two together, or me catching you?" I didn't wait for a response, the words hanging in the air like a poisonous fog, and drove off as quickly as I could, the tires kicking up gravel as I accelerated down the long driveway. I was 3 hours and over 250 miles west of Starfall City, the vibrant, glittering metropolis now a distant, hated memory, longing for Willow Creek Estate to simply disappear beneath the waves, swallowed by the earth, as if it had never existed. The driver, whose voice was rough from years of smoking, a gravelly rasp that seemed to vibrate the very air in the old taxi, inquired about our destination. I told him Meadowbrook, even though I no longer resided there, the name a bittersweet taste on my tongue. He let out a soft, knowing laugh, a puff of cigarette smoke escaping his lips, and inquired if I was merely attempting an escape, a question I left unanswered, preferring the shroud of silence. Eventually, he remarked with a fatalistic sigh that people like me always pick the wrong ones. I conceded with a non-committal grunt, and he then branded me a superficial jerk. I retorted with a jab about him being equally flawed, his rough exterior betraying a similar weariness I now felt. The conversation was going nowhere, a circular dance of weary cynicism. But oddly, I desired his company for a bit longer, the quiet presence of another soul preferable to my own tortured thoughts. We rode in silence for 10 miles, the rhythmic hum of the engine a dull drone. He appeared unchanged, a figure carved from memory, gray hair escaping from beneath a worn baseball cap, a dense salt and pepper beard obscuring half his face, and a broad chest and arms straining the fabric of his faded plaid shirt, hinting at a past life of manual labor. I could almost reach out, touch his weathered hand, but knew it wouldn't make a difference to the churning turmoil within me. I detected a subtle aroma of stale tobacco blended with a robust, woody fragrance, the scent of the road and old regrets. After a while, he suggested I should have confronted the guy, a punch in the nose kind of confrontation. I questioned what that would have altered, given they both knew better but proceeded anyway, their actions of blatant disregard for my feelings and our shared history. He shrugged, asserting it might have made me feel better than running away, suggesting a primal satisfaction. I pointed out that a confrontation would only result in bruised knuckles, a media frenzy, a circus for the tabloids, and them still being together in my chair, the very symbol of my betrayal. He reminded me he bought the chair, a flicker of pride in his eyes, but I countered that it was mine now since he was dead, a morbid but undeniable truth. He agreed, yet still maintained he would have kicked him, a simple brute force solution to a complex emotional problem. As we merged from Freeway 10 to 50, the jarring ring of my mobile pierced the quiet of the cab. It was almost 11 p.m., and after 8 hours on the road, my body ached with weariness. I answered to Adam, our lead guitarist, shouting over the cacophony of nightclub noise, a frantic energy in his voice. He insisted I needed to return because we were on the cusp of a significant deal, a multi-album contract, and Arthur Thorne couldn't manage it alone, his theatrical flair insufficient for the gravity of the negotiations. I told Adam to let Arthur handle it, my voice flat, and power down my phone, the silence a welcome relief. Lead Food, the band from high school that had defied all expectations, featured me on rhythm guitar and lead vocals, with Leo, Marcus, and Owen rounding out the lineup. During junior year, Leo became utterly captivated by alternative country rock. Hearing the Skyhawks blaring from his room, their raw energy and lyrical depth instantly hooked me. We spent countless hours with Silverwood Community Hall, a local band that played every weekend, and it still evokes that day whenever I hear Two Angels, their signature tune. Leo and I, fueled by a newfound passion, began composing songs the very next day, our notebooks filled with nascent ideas. Music came easily, a natural flow of melodies and harmonies, but lyrics proved more challenging, elusive, and demanding. Leo's passion for poetry and classic literature, particularly the works of Whitman and Frost, inspired us, and soon we were generating material prolifically, a torrent of creativity. Leo concentrated more on the music, crafting intricate guitar lines and chord progressions, occasionally assisting with lyrical concepts. After high school, Lead Food triumphed in a talent contest at the Harmony Valley Fair, our raw energy and tight harmonies impressing the judges, securing us a coveted spot at the Prairie State Fair. Despite a strong performance, brimming with youthful exuberance, we only placed second, frustratingly behind a tap dancing act, which led to a chorus of boos from the audience who felt we were robbed. Arthur Thorne, a legendary talent scout known for his keen eye and ruthless negotiations, approached us after the show and arranged auditions in Harmony City and Riverbend, two music industry hubs. By the start of college, against all odds, we had secured a record deal with Golden Gate Records, our dreams now tangible. Leo, ever the purist, departed the band shortly after, concerned about compromising his artistic integrity and losing his scholarship, seeing the commercial machine as a threat to his creative spirit. Arthur then embarked on a relentless search for a new lead guitarist, a replacement for Leo's unique blend of technical skill and emotional depth. During Christmas break, Marcus, Owen, and I auditioned in Riverbend and discovered Adam Bouma, a highly skilled studio musician with lightning-fast fingers and a perfect ear. He wasn't particularly adept with lyrics, so I assumed that role while Marcus and Owen provided the rhythmic backbone and powerful harmonies. Our debut album, Somewhere Down Route 49, achieved multi-platinum status, and Open Plains went diamond platinum, selling over 13 million copies, cementing our place in the rock pantheon. Since then, we've relied heavily on those early successes, touring incessantly and releasing new material that, while popular, never quite recaptured the magic of those first two albums. We're currently negotiating a 5-album deal with Odyssey Records, who are notoriously skeptical about our long-term viability, given our recent output. I'm tasked with demonstrating that we possess strong, fresh material, but our song collection is, to be blunt, weak, a collection of tired melodies and uninspired lyrics. Despite this, the band and Arthur believe we can secure the deal, though Odyssey is applying significant pressure due to our lackluster songs, their patience clearly wearing thin. On Wednesday afternoon, after a lengthy, monotonous drive through the Midwest plains, the endless fields blurring into a green and gold monotony, I checked into a nondescript Haven Inn in Riverton. The bland decor, a stark contrast to the opulence I was used to, seeking only a few hours of undisturbed rest. Exhausted, physically and emotionally, I fell asleep quickly, sinking into a deep, dreamless slumber, but was soon disturbed by a troubling, vivid dream involving Luna and the band, a chaotic mess of betrayal and public scrutiny. I awoke sweating, my heart pounding, and found a call from Arthur, his name a beacon of the world I was trying to escape. I informed him, my voice still thick with sleep, that I wouldn't be returning soon and instructed him to proceed without signing anything just yet, a desperate plea for time. He was apprehensive that I might abandon the band, his voice laced with concern, but I insisted he await my approval, asserting my authority despite my emotional state. Realizing the situation with Luna and Marcus could become public, a media-feeding frenzy, I advised him to defer any deals to stall for time. I showered, the hot water doing little to wash away my weariness, resumed my journey, and by evening was in Heartland, another anonymous town blurring into the landscape. I was still conflicted about whether to leave the band and everything behind, the allure of a simpler life warring with the deep-seated identity of a rock star. Arthur, a disembodied voice in my mind, suggested that if I was too scared to confront Marcus, I should let the band handle it and not run away, reminding me I'd still retain everything: my band, fame, money, and a chance for retribution against Marcus, a subtle form of revenge. I mentioned possibly quitting anyway, the thought a comforting escape, but Arthur dismissed it, his phantom voice echoing with a knowing chuckle, saying I'd eventually remember what it felt like to be at the top, and then lose it all, a haunting premonition. I filed away his words, considering them as potential lyrics for a future, unwritten song. As we drove through Heartland, the quiet hum of the taxi a backdrop to my thoughts. Arthur revealed that his departure from writing, the period of creative barrenness, wasn't because of Grace, his long-suffering wife, but because he'd lost focus due to the celebrity lifestyle, the endless parties and superficial demands. He eventually regained his touch with his final books, masterpieces of introspective fiction, but admitted that abandoning his family, chasing fleeting pleasures, was partly responsible for that lost decade. He suggested that ending things with Luna might be a beneficial move, not just for refocusing, but because she's self-centered, a trait he had warned me about before we married. A forgotten red flag in the whirlwind of romance. That was our last conversation before he died in a mountaineering mishap, a sudden, tragic end to a complicated life, and he'd said the same about Luna. After that, I slammed down the phone, angry at his perceived betrayal and interference, and didn't speak to him again before he passed away a year later. Now, in my mind, Arthur argued that ending things with Luna would shed superfluous burdens and help refocus my energies, allowing my creative well to replenish. He claimed he was the real burden, a self-deprecating jest, and that eliminating his distractions, such as alcohol and women, except Grace and Daisy, their names uttered with fondness, had helped him regain his writing skills, his clarity of thought. I knew he was speaking the truth. His books after the divorce, particularly the one depicting a disintegrated family, reflected his brutal self-criticism and portrayed my mother and me sympathetically, a poignant act of redemption. I questioned whether ending things with Luna would truly help, especially since the band wasn't exactly supportive, their loyalty seemingly shifting. Arthur said I should savor my good fortune and quit if I wished, his voice laced with a weary wisdom. He warned me to remain engaged with something meaningful to avoid becoming someone who merely recounts past glories, a washed-up relic. I was finally in Providence, which was not much better than Heartland or the Midwest Plains, just another sprawling urban center blending into the anonymous landscape. When my mobile phone rang, its jarring sound pulling me from my internal reverie. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself. Luna's voice came through, high-pitched and urgent, asking if I was there and pleading with me to talk. I cut straight to the point, my voice devoid of emotion, inquiring how long the affair had been going on, demanding a direct answer. She dodged the question, her voice morphing into a whine, insisting that she wanted to discuss it in person rather than over the phone, avoiding accountability. I told her flatly that I didn't want to meet right now, not while the image of her and Marcus in my chair was burned into my mind. She asked my location, her voice desperate, and offered to come to me, a last-ditch effort to control the narrative. "I don't want you coming over," I stated, my voice firm. "I need some time to sort things out, to breathe." "You can't take a break now, honey," she insisted, her tone suddenly shifting to one of exasperated concern. "You're right in the middle of your new record deal. Marcus and the guys are really concerned." "Seriously?" I shouted into the phone, the rage finally breaking through my control calm. "I catch you and Marcus together, and all you care about are my duties to the band? What about your responsibilities to me? Can we discuss that for a moment? Luna, your marital vows, perhaps?" "Screw you," she snapped, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Grow the heck up, Alex. You sleep with groupies all the time. So what's the big deal if I have a little fun on the side? It's not like you're giving me what I need." Her words were like a physical slap. "That's absolute rubbish, and you know it," I retorted, my voice trembling with indignation. "I haven't been with a groupie since our first tour. I didn't even know you then, and I haven't been with anyone else since we got together. How many times do I need to tell you this, to reassure you of my faithfulness?" "What about Sarah?" she shot back, referencing her younger co-star, her voice laced with venom. "Remember those photos in the Daily Beacon last year? Are you going to deny that too, Mr. Sterling? I took a deep breath, attempting to remain calm, to logic my way through her accusations. We've gone over this a million times, I said, my voice strained. Nothing happened. We ran into each other at a club. She was drunk, and some guys were bothering her. I just gave her a ride home. That's it. And I'll tell you again, she countered, her voice icy. That's a damn lie. And you know it. She was all over you. She was falling down drunk. I exclaimed, the memory of her stumbling, clumsy form vivid in my mind. You saw her legs giving out, Luna, for crying out loud. Damn it, Alex, just come back here, she pleaded, her voice suddenly softening, dissolving into genuine-sounding tears. Crying on cue was her only real weakness as an actress, a vulnerability that always seemed to melt my resolve. I'm sorry, I said, my voice weakening. I can't handle this right now. We'll talk later, all right? Don't hang up on me, she pleaded, her voice rising in a desperate wail. I ended the call anyway, the click of the phone a final, defiant act, turning off my mobile phone, severing the last fragile connection. The first time I really noticed Luna was backstage at the Unity Jam Festival. Leadfoot was performing right before the Hawks farewell tour, a massive, career-defining gig, and Luna was the celebrity chosen to introduce us, her star already burning brightly. That was 5 years ago, and both of us were at the absolute peak of our careers, radiating the kind of effortless cool that comes with youth and success. As a child star, Luna had made the transition from a minor role in Campus Chronicles to a leading part in a massively popular teen series, her face plastered on every teen magazine. She evolved seamlessly from a tomboyish ingenue into a stunning young woman, her wholesome image beloved by fans across the nation. Despite her squeaky clean, wholesome on-screen image, her off-camera life was a whirlwind of wild parties, often involving high-profile Hollywood figures and compromising photos that skirted the edge of scandal. However, she steered clear of pills and rarely drank, which kept her out of the deepest tabloid pits, a testament to her calculated self-preservation. During a high-profile festival gig with Leadfoot, the air thick with the roar of the crowd, Luna approached me after our set, clad in tight, faded jeans, and a vintage Western shirt that somehow made her look both innocent and fiercely alluring. She flirted with an easy confidence, her eyes sparkling, and invited me out for a late-night drink. I, captivated, agreed, and after a thrilling second set, adrenaline still coursing through my veins, we spent 3 electrifying days together in my hotel suite, a blur of whispered conversations and passionate embraces. Then, on a whim, we flew to Serenity Isles for 10 more days of sun-drenched indulgence and reckless abandon. I fell for her completely, irrevocably, when she taught me to drink beer through my nose, a silly, intimate moment that solidified our bond, and we married a whirlwind year later, sealing our fate. Despite the immense pressures of filming schedules, relentless touring, and the constant glare of public attention, we managed better than most celebrity couples, navigating the chaos with a surprising resilience, until recently. Returning to my mother's house after 7 years felt like stepping into a time capsule. I noted it was just as I remembered, the familiar scent of her potpourri and old books instantly enveloping me. Mom, I called out to her, my voice raspy from the long drive, and she appeared, her face creased with surprise, greeting me warmly despite her disheveled appearance, as if she'd just tumbled out of bed. Noticing my rough state, my unshaven face and bloodshot eyes, she inquired if I was interrupting anything, a knowing twinkle in her eye, and I offered, half-jokingly, to stay at a motel for the night, respectful of her privacy. Mom, with a mischievous grin, summoned her current partner, Dr. Julian, from upstairs. To my surprise, he was significantly younger than her, a handsome man with a kind face and a shock of sandy hair. Mom joked, patting his arm affectionately, that his age helped him keep up with her energy undiminished by the years. Dr. Julian greeted me warmly, his handshake firm, and I apologized profusely for the unexpected visit, the late hour. He seemed genuinely pleased to see me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Mom reassured me, with a sly wink, that their relationship was over for the night, which Dr. Julian's affectionate glance at her confirmed, a silent, understanding passing between them. Mom, ever the caretaker, noticed I hadn't eaten properly in over 40 hours and, with practiced ease, prepared grilled cheese and tomato soup, my childhood favorite, the ultimate comfort food. While she cooked, the sizzle of butter and the aroma of melting cheese filling the kitchen, Julian and I caught up on Meadowbrook news at the table, discussing local happenings and mutual acquaintances. Julian, ever polite, inquired about Luna, and I struggled to offer a convincing smile, the mention of her name like a fresh wound. Julian, perceptive as he was, then suggested both Luna and I might be cheating, a common occurrence in their experience. I admitted Luna's affair with Marcus Reed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, to which Mom responded bluntly, "Good heavens, Alex, Marcus Reed? That's charlatan." Her straightforwardness, like Arthur's, was bracingly refreshing, a stark contrast to the veiled accusations and half-truths of Hollywood. Julian was visibly surprised by Mom's raw honesty and nearly choked on his soup, his eyes wide. Mom, her voice filled with a mother's protective scorn, criticized Marcus Reed's false charm and reckless behavior behind closed doors, hinting at a reputation that extended beyond the music industry. Julian asked about my plans, and I said I needed to stay with Mom to relax and clear my head, to find some semblance of peace. Mom agreed, provided Julian was okay with it, her gaze softening. I learned Julian had split from his previous partner, Beatrice, and was now living with Mom, a development Mom hadn't mentioned, preferring to keep her private life private. It made sense that Julian and Mom likely connected on New Year's Eve after a few drinks, given Mom's enduring charm and timeless looks. It wasn't surprising Julian was into her. She had always possessed an irresistible magnetism. I laughed, a genuine laugh that felt alien after the past few days, and asked Julian if I could stay with them, watching his face intently. His serious look, a moment of consideration before a wry grin, made me laugh harder, causing milk to spill through my nose, a childish reaction that felt liberating. After a much-needed nap, the first restful sleep I'd had in days, I found a note from Mom saying she was out for the evening and Julian was at the office. Not wanting to be alone with my thoughts, I went to the Golden Spur, the old diner where I used to work as a cook during high school. The packed parking lot, overflowing with vehicles even on a Friday night, and the lively, bustling dining room showed they were still serving great food, the aroma of sizzling burgers and fried onions filling the air. At the bar, Penelope, whose warm, familiar face lit up when she saw me, gave me a big hug, her embrace comforting. She and her husband, Victor, had owned the Golden Spur for over 30 years and always treated their staff like family, a rare and cherished quality. Penelope mentioned it had been too long since we last met and led me, hand in hand, to the kitchen to see Victor. Victor, busy flipping burgers and shouting orders, yet remarkably clean despite the controlled chaos of the kitchen, gave me a bear hug that nearly crushed my ribs and commented on my appearance, a playful smirk on his face. He laughed at my joke about California, about how it could mess a man up. He promised to fix me up with a proper meal, something hearty and comforting. Penelope seated me at a small, corner table, tucked away from the main rush, and pointed out a redhead working at the waitress station, her movements efficient and graceful. I recognized her instantly as Chloe Davies, who hadn't changed much in 10 years, still possessing that quiet intensity and striking beauty. The diner was filled with familiar faces, patrons who had been coming for decades, making it feel like home, a comforting anchor in a turbulent world. "Hey, Chloe," I said, a little surprised, a lump forming in my throat. Chloe quickly took my drink order, her gaze flickering to mine for a brief moment before she moved off to attend to other tables, her focus unwavering. When she returned with a fresh beer, her movements fluid, she swapped out the empty bottle and left again, a fleeting brush of her arm against mine leaving a lingering warmth. Chloe had been my high school crush, the elusive object of my teenage affections, but despite my clumsy efforts, she never seemed to notice me. She was focused and aloof, sticking to her small group of brainy classmates, buried in textbooks and quiet conversation. By the time she worked at the Golden Spur, saving money for college, I was already a seasoned cook there, observing her from afar. I admired her efficiency, her quiet dedication, and her reserved nature, though I once awkwardly tried to talk to her about something mundane and got summarily rejected, her polite but firm dismissal leaving me red-faced. Victor later explained that Chloe's shyness was due to her parents pushing her into the job to help her overcome it, a gentle form of exposure therapy. Months later, a brief, almost whispered "Hello, Alex" from Chloe just before she left for college was a high for me, a tiny spark of acknowledgement that I cherished. Now, sitting with Liam Hayes at the bar, nursing another beer, I inquired casually about Chloe, trying to appear nonchalant. Liam, now a surprisingly successful insurance salesman, told me she had married a quiet, unassuming engineer who, in a twist of fate, left her for a male co-worker, a devastating blow. Chloe is back in town, working as a diligent English teacher at the local high school and part-time at the bar to make ends meet. She's not seeing anyone, he said, and hasn't shown any interest in dating since her divorce, her walls seemingly impenetrable. I went to get us another round from the bar, noticing the shortage of cocktail waitresses, the staff looking harried. I also asked Liam about Leo, my old bandmate and friend. He still keeps in touch with Leo, who lives contentedly on Willow Lane, married to Holly Reed, with 2 bright, energetic daughters, and teaching English at the high school, his life a picture of quiet domesticity. Leo occasionally plays in a bar band, a small detail that struck me as ironic since he had famously left Leadfoot to avoid that exact scene, eschewing fame for a simpler existence. Liam's casual comment made me realize Leo was undeniably happier living a simpler life, unburdened by the relentless demands of the music industry, something he'd always preferred, a gentle, grounded soul. Unlike me, Leo had avoided the chaos of fame and built a fulfilling, normal life, a true anchor in his community. He had it better than I did, a profound realization, and he also genuinely enjoyed Holly Reed's company, their marriage a testament to enduring love. As Arthur and I walked home, my phantom companion a silent observer, he noticed my mood, a contemplative stillness that had settled over me. I explained I had a lot on my mind, not just from Liam's comments, but also from realizing how out of touch I felt lately, how far I'd drifted from my roots. I noted that my mom came from a small town, a place of simple values, while Arthur's family was from Grand Central's elite, a world of old money and gilded privilege. We were from fundamentally different worlds, small town versus glamorous. Arthur agreed with a nod, but I added that his behavior, like sleeping with starlets and living a lavish lifestyle, only highlighted the stark contrast between our backgrounds. Liam's comments, his casual observations, made me truly see that Leo's small-town life which I had always viewed through a Hollywood lens as somehow less significant, actually made him profoundly happier, a quiet contentment I yearned for. Despite my success and immense wealth, I felt empty, hollowed out, with a superstar wife who was now a stranger and even my best friend feeling like a ghost, a distant memory. Arthur had started appearing to me, a disconcerting but strangely comforting presence, a year after he died, following a particularly grueling show in Starfall City. At first, I thought it was a negative experience, a sign of impending madness, but he seemed too real, his wit too sharp, and our conversations too clear, too logical to be mere hallucinations. After months of increasingly frequent private conversations with him, which felt undeniably creepy, like I was losing my mind, I saw Dr. Maxwell, a renowned psychiatrist. Initial doctors, after running countless tests, thought it might be pills residue, a lingering effect of past indulgences, but tests showed nothing conclusive. Dr. Maxwell, after extensive sessions, ruled out schizophrenia and suggested I was seeing a manifestation of my past, a healthy way my mind was dealing with overwhelming stress and unresolved issues, particularly with my absent, complicated father. Arthur then, in his theory, was a stand-in for that absent report, a projection of my need for guidance and connection. Dr. Maxwell's explanation made a strange kind of sense. He believed seeing Arthur was a healthy way to handle my pressures, and that over time, I just have internal dialogues, the manifestations fading into thought. I felt better, a sense of relief washing over me, until Arthur reappeared, mocking Dr. Maxwell's theory with a sardonic grin and revealing intricate details about his long-lost manuscript. Information only he could know, which was published to critical acclaim 8 months later, a stunning vindication of his spectral presence. After a few beers at the Golden Spur, the rich taste of a huge bacon cheeseburger, and the comforting hum of good conversation, I slept well, a deep, restorative slumber. Friday morning, I felt refreshed, energized, and saw my old cheerful self in the mirror, a genuine smile replacing the strained grimace of the past few days. Even the 23 unread voice messages on my phone, a buzzing reminder of the chaos I'd left behind, couldn't dampen my mood. I had yogurt and coffee for breakfast, then spent almost 11 hours writing music, the creative floodgates opening wide, inspired by a story I'd read about Lennon and McCartney's legendary songwriting sessions. Julian stopped by for lunch, bringing sandwiches, but I was too focused, too deeply immersed in the flow of creation to take a break. I filled half my notebook with new ideas, melodies blossoming into full compositions. When Mom and Julian went out for their traditional Friday fish fry, I continued working on a new melody, a haunting, beautiful tune that seemed to write itself. It wasn't perfect, but it was close, agonizingly so. I got ready slowly, the anticipation building, and walked the familiar path to the Golden Spur, arriving late to find a packed bar, every stool taken, where the band was playing a catchy, earnest tune that filled the room with warmth. Penelope, ever attentive, spotted me immediately and led me to the kitchen where Victor was preparing food, his usual boisterous self, joking about California ruining me and making me soft. Chloe, her cheeks faintly blushing, was asked to get me a beer, her eyes avoiding mine as she moved. Her subtle scent, a hint of lavender and something uniquely hers, lingered as she left. Penelope and Victor, their faces etched with knowing smiles, watched me, and I stammered, feeling like a clumsy teenager, about how good Chloe looked, her presence radiating a quiet beauty. Victor joked about me needing to grow a pair, a crude but affectionate remark which made me laugh, a genuine, uninhibited sound. After my meal, a delicious, greasy bacon cheeseburger that tasted like home, I returned to the bar and saw Liam Hayes chatting with Holly Cooper, formerly Reed, who looked much the same as at prom, her youthful beauty still evident, but with a bit more weight around her middle and a few gentle lines around her eyes, signs of a life well lived. I offered to buy drinks for everyone as the song ended, the final chords fading into the din of conversation. Holly hugged me tightly, her embrace warm and sincere, clearly excited to see me. Liam nodded a greeting, a knowing smirk on his face, saying he'd handle the drinks since I'd be busy tonight. Holly, her eyes sparkling, asked if I'd play a song with Leo and his band, saying it would mean a lot to the college guys in the crowd, a real treat for the locals. With memories of prom and her pleading eyes, I couldn't refuse, the pull of nostalgia too strong. I agreed, and Holly quickly, excitedly, informed Leo, who was still on stage. All eyes in the bar were suddenly on me as Leo announced that Alex Sterling would be joining them for a song. The crowd, familiar with my local roots but surprised to see me here, looked surprised and then excited, a buzz spreading through the room. Leo humorously introduced me, doubting my guitar skills after all these years, but suggesting I might sing a bit, a playful jab. The crowd's excitement was palpable, their anticipation a tangible force, and I felt a strong urge to reconnect with these familiar faces, to feel the raw energy of live music again. Climbing onto the stage, I exchanged a friendly jab and a quick, heartfelt hug with Leo, feeling the warmth of our reunion, a bond unbroken by years and distance. Leo suggested we get started, and I picked up an acoustic guitar, its familiar weight comforting in my hands. After a quick setup, adjusting the microphone and checking the sound, we decided on Two Angels, a song that always felt like ours, starting with a haunting piano lead, followed by my guitar, the rhythmic thump of drums, the deep pulse of bass, and Leo's shimmering slide guitar. The song featured a standout piano performance by Julian, a revelation, and an extended instrumental that allowed us all to shine. By the end, it felt like we'd never been apart, our musical chemistry still potent. Leo's voice, raw and soulful, was even better than I remembered. After the cheers, Leo introduced me properly to the crowd, his voice full of pride, and I asked to stay on stage, hungry for more. We jumped into a celebrated epic ballad, a crowd favorite, improvising the arrangement with Leo's intricate guitar licks and the piano shining, weaving a tapestry of sound. The place was packed with people dancing, bodies swaying to the music, and more streaming in from the street, drawn by the energy. I stayed on stage for the rest of the night, joining the band during breaks, signing autographs for eager fans, and posing for photos. We played country rock classics, a few lead flute songs that sent ripples of excitement through the crowd, and even some new material by Leo and his band. By the last hour, the crowd was overflowing, spilling out onto the sidewalk, and we ended with a harmony-filled, raucous version of a beloved folk rock anthem, which drove the crowd wild, even though our voices were shot from hours of singing. After helping with the tear down, the satisfying click of guitar cases, accepting free beers from Victor, and watching the tired bartenders clean up, we wrapped up with a final beer in the dim, quiet barroom with Victor, Penelope, Holly, Leo, and the band. Victor, tired but beaming, suggested we do this more often so he could retire eventually, handing the reins to the next generation. Suddenly, I heard Chloe's quiet voice behind me, a soft murmur that cut through the lingering chatter. "You were good," she said, her voice barely a whisper. We locked eyes across the dimly lit room, and I was speechless, my mind suddenly blank. Holly, ever the playful one, broke the moment with a teasing comment about my lost words, while Victor muttered about California ruining me and making me soft, a familiar refrain. Chloe smiled faintly at their teasing before she politely complimented the performance, her gaze lingering on mine for a brief moment, and then left, disappearing into the night. Leo and Penelope, their eyes twinkling with amusement, immediately teased me about still having feelings for Chloe, the old crush resurrected. Victor, ever the instigator, suggested I was too scared to act on them, to actually pursue her. Holly, however, her voice laced with a genuine concern, warned me not to get too close as Chloe had been through enough, a protective instinct surfacing. Penelope, observant as ever, noticed my reaction when my marriage was mentioned, a flicker of pain in my eyes, and whispered something to Victor, who nodded, understanding my unspoken issues. Leo, changing the subject, asked about my plans for the next day, and I mentioned writing the creative surge still with me. Holly, with a warm smile, invited me to a cookout at their house, mentioning casually that Chloe and her son would be there, a subtle nudge. I agreed, a ripple of excitement going through me at the idea of seeing Chloe again. Leo thought it would be good for me to hang out with normal folks, a grounding experience after years in the celebrity bubble. Little did we know the next day would be anything but typical in Meadowbrook, the quiet town about to be thrust into the spotlight. I slept in until nearly 11 a.m. on Saturday, the deep sleep a testament to my exhaustion, only to be woken by Mom yelling about people on her lawn, a familiar, dreaded sound. It was the press and fans, their cameras flashing, their shouts echoing. I quickly scrambled to get ready, knowing I had to look perfect, composed, to avoid rumors of a pills binge or a public scandal. 15 minutes later, I joined Mom on the porch, her face a mixture of annoyance and resignation, smiling at her reassuringly, and then facing the throng of reporters and cameramen. I calmly directed the reporters to the sidewalk, then, with an air of authority, onto the porch, setting the ground rules. Ladies first, and then left to right, maintaining a semblance of order amidst the chaos. The first question, sharp and direct from Entertainment Insight, was about the viral videos of me and Leo Cooper, and if I was leaving Leadfoot to form a new band. I clarified, my voice steady, that I had no plans to leave Leadfoot. I was just visiting family and supporting an old friend, a carefully crafted response. Another reporter, pushing for a scoop, asked about leaving mid-record negotiations, implying irresponsibility. I said Arthur Thorne, our manager, was handling that, and I just needed a break, a little time to myself. When asked about rumors involving Luna Vance and Marcus Reed, I plastered on a fake smile, my voice calm and reassuring, stating that Luna and I were fine, and I was simply taking a break, a well-rehearsed lie. After half an hour of relentless questioning, the same questions rephrased repeatedly, I stuck to my story, a broken record of carefully chosen words. The reporters, sensing they wouldn't get more, thanked me, offered a perfunctory apology to Mom for the intrusion, and left to edit the footage, already calculating their headlines. I told Mom I was heading to Leo's cookout, and she and Julian might come by later, a casual invitation. I packed my guitars into the Escalade, making sure they were secure, and took a scenic route, winding through back roads to avoid the lingering press, arriving at Leo's place around 12:30, a welcome sanctuary. Leo greeted me at the door, a warm smile on his face, and led me to the deck where he was grilling, the aroma of charcoal and sizzling meat filling the air. Nearby, kids were splashing and laughing in the pool, their carefree joy a stark contrast to my internal turmoil. Leo mentioned he had dealt with reporters that morning by threatening to call the police, a no-nonsense approach that appealed to me. I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh, wishing I could have done the same. I grabbed a Diet Pepsi from the cooler and settled into a comfortable lawn chair, soaking in the peaceful atmosphere. Leo joined me after meticulously preparing the pork shoulders for the grill, basting them with a savory marinade. We spent the next 20 minutes chatting, catching up on life's mundane details, and keeping a watchful eye on the kids in the pool. Leo updated me on who was married, who had kids, and where they worked, the tapestry of small-town life. We then talked seriously about the past 6 years, the unspoken distance between us. Leo, perceptive as ever, asked why I was back, his gaze steady and knowing. I initially avoided the question, focusing on some distant oak trees, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. Eventually, gathering my courage, I asked if he was happy. He said he was, his answer immediate and sincere, and I admitted I wasn't sure if I was. It seemed like what I wanted, the fame, the fortune, but it felt overwhelming now, a gilded cage. Leo, ever pragmatic, advised me to simply get out, to walk away from it all, but I explained it wasn't simple due to my band obligations and my wife's unwillingness to move here, to leave her Hollywood life. When asked about the rumors of Luna and Marcus, I confirmed them, the truth a bitter pill. Leo, looking distant, shared that Marcus had tried something similar with Holly years ago, a forgotten detail from our past, but she had shut him down, her integrity unyielding. I told Leo the first was conflicted about Luna, loving her despite everything, but fearing the radical change that divorcing her would entail. He suggested I talk to Luna to understand why it happened, a delve into her motivations, which would help me decide if it was a one-time mistake, a momentary lapse, or something more systemic that might recur. He also joked about famous people's tolerance for such issues, their twisted moral compasses. Leo's advice was clearer, more grounded than Arthur's spectral counsel. He shared a story about someone who found their partner with someone else and discovered she was just looking for someone new before ending things, a clean break. He suggested that if there's genuine love, a deep connection, it might be worth trying to fix things instead of giving up immediately, a testament to his belief in enduring relationships. Holly's voice, cheerful and bright, cut in as she overheard Leo's metaphor about fixing a lawn mower, her presence a welcome interruption. Leo reassured me that only I could decide if my marriage was salvageable, noting that many couples work through rough patches and end up happy afterward, their bond strengthened by adversity. I went inside to get more beers and saw Holly and Chloe preparing food in the kitchen, their heads bent in conversation. They froze when I entered, their faces flushing slightly. Holly quickly recovered and hugged me, but Chloe, her eyes avoiding mine, muttered a shy hello, her discomfort palpable. It seemed like they had overheard my conversation with Leo, which worried me, the thought of them knowing my personal drama mortifying. Back on the deck, I handed out drinks and joined a passionate debate with Julian about Roland Kane versus a classic soul maestro, the pros and cons of technical prowess versus raw emotion. We agreed that while Kane was versatile, a master of many genres, the maestro excelled in jazz, his genius unparalleled. As more guests arrived, the deck filling with laughter and conversation, we moved to the pole barn to play some music, the stage calling to us. Leo asked me to perform Time to Start Again, one of our old hits, a poignant ballad about mending a broken relationship, its lyrics now ironically relevant. I sat upon a stool, the familiar weight of the guitar comforting, and played the song, my eyes drifting to Chloe, noticing her swaying gently to the music, watching me closely, her expression unreadable. When the song ended, the room was silent, the emotional resonance hanging in the air. Chloe, now bright red, tears glistening in her eyes, was clearly moved, the song hitting a deep chord within her. Julian, sensing the sudden intensity, suggested a break, and everyone went for drinks, leaving Chloe and me alone in the quiet barn. Chloe, her voice soft, apologized for overhearing my talk with Leo and said she understood what I was going through, a shared empathy. I tried to smile, a weak attempt, but felt awkward, unsure how to respond to her vulnerability. She asked about the song, her voice barely a whisper, and I told her I hoped it would cheer her up, a clumsy attempt at comfort. I then, on a whim, played If I Only Had a Brain from The Wizard of Oz, a whimsical, unexpected choice. Chloe laughed through her tears, a bright, pure sound, and even joined in at the end, her voice surprisingly sweet. I invited her to sit beside me, and she did after a bit of hesitation, a comfortable silence settling between us. I asked about her little boy in the pool, and her face lit up when she talked about Asher, her eyes softening with maternal pride. We chatted as I played, easy melodies flowing from my fingertips, and I noticed she was more at ease, her guard slowly dropping. It was time to say what I'd been avoiding for years, the truth I'd held back. I stopped playing and folded my arms over the guitar, my heart pounding, wanting to say something I'd been holding back for a long time, something significant. Chloe's face grew serious, her eyes searching mine, and she admitted she'd had similar feelings for me since I'd asked her to homecoming all those years ago. She explained she was scared then, young and unsure, and wished she had said yes back then, a lament for a road not taken. She'd wondered how things might have been different, especially after her divorce, after her own heartbreak. I was stunned, completely speechless, and Chloe, sensing my surprise, urged me to say something, anything. I muttered my utter surprise, the absurdity of the moment, and we both laughed, a shared release of tension. But then Chloe became serious again, her voice firm, making it clear she wasn't interested in being the other woman, in being a party to my marital drama. She insisted that if I decided to leave my wife, she wouldn't be part of that decision or relationship, her boundaries clear and unyielding. I agreed, acknowledging that after all this time, it was good just to talk openly, honestly. I wasn't looking to complicate things further, especially with someone I barely knew, someone who deserved better. Our conversation was cut short by the sudden, distinct sound of a helicopter landing nearby, the thudding rotors signaling that new complications were rapidly on the way. Chloe and I stood outside, a shared sense of foreboding hanging between us, watching the helicopter settle onto the open field a few hundred feet away, kicking up a storm of dust and dry grass. Leo's little girls, oblivious to the drama, ran up excitedly, their voices chirping, calling the newcomer Uncle Arthur. I was surprised they knew him so well, a familiar figure in their lives, and felt a pang of guilt for not staying closer with Leo, for drifting apart. Arthur, ever the showman, emerged from the helicopter, his suit uncreased, helping out Quentin Stone, the slick Odyssey Records executive handling our contract. I cursed under my breath. I'd hoped to avoid him on this trip, to maintain my anonymity. Chloe noticed my reaction, a grimace I couldn't hide, and asked if I knew Quentin. I confirmed with a nod and walked over, joined by Leo, who looked genuinely happy to see Arthur, but puzzled by my visible irritation. Arthur greeted us cheerfully, a wide, practiced smile on his face, asking if they could join the party. Leo, ever the gracious host, welcomed them warmly and introduced Quentin, but I ignored their extended handshakes, my eyes fixed in a glare on Quentin, a clear sign of my displeasure. Arthur, sensing the tension, tried to smooth things over, mentioning the viral video from last night, the unexpected publicity. Quentin, adopting a grave tone, apologized, explaining that the situation with the video and the swirling rumors about Luna and Marcus had become urgent, a potential crisis. He asked if we could get the rest of the band out here for a quick meeting, stressing the need for a united front. Leo said they were at the house, and I tried to brush it off, suggesting it could wait, but Quentin insisted, his voice firm, stressing the seriousness of the situation. Arthur, his patience wearing thin, turned to me, clearly frustrated by my recalcitrance. He explained, his voice low but urgent, that Quentin's bosses and all of Grand Central, the entire music industry establishment, had caught wind of the situation, and the news was about to explode everywhere, a media wildfire. They were hesitant to continue talks with Leadfoot because Marcus's drama, his public infidelity, made the deal too risky, too volatile. I realized my career might be in serious trouble if we didn't address this soon, if I didn't take control. Even though I was considering quitting anyway, a quiet escape, I didn't want to narrow my options too drastically to lose my leverage. Quentin, breaking into my anxious thoughts, mentioned that the situation had worsened overnight, but had shifted dramatically when the video started trending online, its unexpected popularity a game changer. Leo and I guided Arthur and Quentin to the pole barn, the makeshift music studio now taking on an air of serious business, where Leo went to round up the rest of the band, Julian, Seth, and Finn. I watched as they entered, each showing a mix of nerves and excitement, anticipating something big. Julian was tall and brooding, his eyes intense. Seth was muscular with a no-nonsense crew cut, and Finn had a straightforward, down-to-earth demeanor, his grin infectious. Leo seemed oddly amused by the entire situation, and I had a sense of what was coming, a premonition of a grand revelation. Quentin, beaming, started talking about the incredible attention from last night's performance, hinting at monumental news, building the suspense. Arthur nudged him to continue, a silent command, and Quentin revealed, his voice brimming with barely contained excitement, that Bob Dylan himself had called, praising our rendition of a celebrated epic ballad. Leo seemed unfazed by the news, a quiet pride in his eyes, but I was clearly surprised, a shock wave going through me, especially seeing Julian and Finn so visibly excited, their faces aglow. Regardless of personal tastes, Bob Dylan's praise is a huge deal in the industry, a golden endorsement. When Dylan speaks, record executives pay attention, especially after his recent reinvention and Nobel Prize. Quentin, eager to capitalize on the moment, asked to see what else we had, to hear our original material, and Leo, though still unsure about the sudden change in fortune, agreed. Quentin wanted to see us perform without interruptions, a true, unadulterated audition. So we played 4 more songs, a mix of upbeat tunes that got feet tapping, a haunting ballad that brought tears to eyes, and a medium-tempo piece that showcased our versatility. Quentin recorded everything on a camcorder, a relic in the age of smartphones, which, while not perfect, was better than a shaky YouTube upload. Afterward, Quentin, his face alight with enthusiasm, thanked us profusely, skipped the food despite the delicious aroma, and promised to call the next day before leaving in the helicopter, the powerful rotors once again stirring up dust. Arthur stuck around for the party, surprisingly at ease, and I was even more surprised to see how well everyone knew him, sharing jokes and stories. My guilt for not staying in touch with Leo deepened when Mom revealed, over a shared plate of barbecue, that she had helped enlist Julian, Seth, and Finn from Stonebrook College. She had simply asked the music professors for recommendations and put them in touch with Leo, a casual act that had profoundly changed my life. An hour later, Leo and I were in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, shredding pork shoulders for sandwiches, a mundane but comforting task. He handed me some plastic bear claws, their sharp prongs looking comically dangerous, and showed me how to use them with practiced ease. As we worked, the rhythmic tearing of meat filling the silence, Leo mentioned he was seriously considering something, but didn't go into details until Arthur, ever the timely apparition, came in. Arthur and Leo exchanged knowing glances, a silent conspiracy passing between them, and Arthur joined us, ignoring my unspoken questions while grabbing another pair of bear claws. I realized Arthur knew his way around the kitchen, another surprising facet of his spectral persona. As we shredded the pork in silence, I waited, my patience wearing thin, for Leo to explain what was really going on, what secret they were keeping. Arthur finally broke the silence, his voice low and serious, revealing that Lead Food had been struggling significantly since the second album. While our initial popularity had kept us selling millions and packing arenas, our songwriting had undeniably declined, growing stale and uninspired. He shared that he had flown in to see Leo about a year after our Grammy win, noticing the sharp drop in quality and hoping Leo, the true creative force, would still be writing, nurturing his talent. I was surprised, a jolt running through me, to hear Leo was still writing, a talent I thought he'd abandoned. Arthur, ever blunt, admitted that Leo's new stuff was only fit for album filler, not the chart-topping hits Lead Food needed. Leo had been trying to convince Arthur to get us back together, sensing the band's decline, but it never happened, the timing never right. When I asked why they hadn't just reached out earlier, why they kept me in the dark, Arthur explained that they tried to approach me during a particularly busy period for our last album, Desert Bloom, when I was perpetually exhausted and distracted. When I pressed further, Leo, looking uncomfortable, admitted that he had received my latest batch of songs 5 months ago after the Continental Tour and had, without my knowledge, reworked most of them, giving them new life. I was initially pleased, a rush of relief, but my smile quickly faded as I waited for more details, a sense of dread creeping in. Arthur, his gaze unwavering, revealed that the songs we'd been negotiating with Odyssey Records were originally mine, uninspired and lackluster, and that Leo hadn't been involved in their initial creation. He'd only seen my rewrites recently and agreed they were better, but not quite right yet, still needing Leo's touch. The issue, the bombshell, was that he learned about Marcus and Luna shortly before getting the updated songs, which meant he knew about it for 2 months without telling me, allowing my misery to fester. I was furious, a white-hot anger rising within me, and struggled to keep my hands from hitting the countertop, from lashing out at their deception. I confronted Arthur and Leo, demanding to know why they hadn't informed me sooner, why they let me live in blissful ignorance. Leo retorted, his voice tinged with bitterness, that I hadn't been in touch for 6 years and had ignored his wedding invitation, so he didn't see the point in updating me on his life or my wife's infidelities. Holly's voice, sharp and practical, cut through our argument, reminding us we had guests outside who didn't need to hear our family drama, a public spectacle. We sheepishly returned to shredding the pork, the rhythmic tearing a counterpoint to our simmering anger, while Holly put on a cheerful front for the guests, her professionalism unwavering. I told Leo, the first, never saw the invitation, my voice laced with genuine regret, and felt awful about how I treated him, how distant I'd become. He said I needed to figure things out with Luna, to find my own path, and even if he wouldn't forgive her for her actions, he thought I should decide for myself, not be swayed by his judgment. I then asked Arthur if it was just about the money, if his manipulations were purely mercenary. He assured me it wasn't, that he cared about me like a brother and didn't want to see me lose everything, my career, my identity, without a backup plan, a safety net. Leo pointed out that Arthur did tell me, technically, but Arthur clarified that he'd ended the negotiations early because he had a tip about Marcus and Luna meeting, a premonition of their affair. He didn't think I'd believe him over Luna or Marcus, the 2 people I trusted most, so he didn't mention it directly, opting for a different strategy. Arthur explained his plan was to help me stay in the band and keep my career on track, even offering to help find a new bass player, a replacement for Marcus. Leo confirmed he was in on the plan, a silent partner in this elaborate scheme. This was a lot to process, a dizzying whirlwind of information, and I was pretty pissed, but honestly, I couldn't blame either of them entirely. Arthur had been looking out for me in lead food, even if it was partly for his own interests, his loyalty, a complex mix. I asked what the afternoon was about, what new gambit they had planned. Arthur explained that the viral videos of last night's performance were exploding in popularity far beyond anticipation. They were getting tens of millions of hits, and even Bob Dylan had taken notice, a ringing endorsement. Odyssey Records was keen to capitalize on this momentum, this unexpected resurgence, and Quentin saw the undeniable potential in reuniting us, in fostering this new chemistry. If Arthur had shown him the rewrites earlier, the truly inspired material, we might already have the contract and be dealing with kicking Marcus out, a fate he now justly deserved. My anger faded, replaced by a slow, triumphant grin. Marcus was in serious trouble now, his comfortable life about to unravel. Arthur confirmed he was nearly broke, a shocking revelation that surprised even Leo. Arthur mentioned that Marcus was spending faster than he could earn and didn't have songwriting credits like us, his income solely from touring. Marcus had lavish places everywhere, Mountain Haven, a sprawling cabin, a penthouse in Grand Central, a beach house in Ocean View, and even a swanky apartment in Avalon, a playground for the rich. I laughed at the thought of Marcus pursuing romantic escapades with Avalon women, the irony not lost on me. We finished shredding the pork and started setting up the trays, the aroma of barbecue filling the kitchen. I apologized to Leo, who admitted he might have been too harsh, too quick to judge. He'd intentionally sent the wedding invitation to my old address to keep it low-key, avoiding the public spectacle, which I could only laugh at, a shared moment of understanding. We brought the trays outside, and I noticed Chloe watching me from across the deck, a subtle curiosity in her eyes. Leo went over, kissed her forehead, and whispered something, a moment of intimacy that twisted my gut with a pang of envy. She smiled at me, a soft, encouraging smile, and I wished I'd been the one comforting her, the one sharing that quiet moment. With a beer in hand, I stood alone, thinking about how Luna's infidelity had likely been ongoing, a pattern of betrayal, not a one-time mistake. I doubted I'd ever fully get over it, the wound too deep, but I decided to hear her out, to understand her perspective. After 5 years together, I needed to understand the full extent of what happened, to seek closure. Chloe's gentle hand on my shoulder broke my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. She asked about my mood, sensing my internal turmoil, and I shared a saying from my father, a piece of old, cynical wisdom. Some days you're the pigeon, and some days you're the statue. Her laughter was bright and pure, a melodic sound, and it made me feel good to see her so genuinely happy, a rare gift. But the next morning, Arthur's grumbling, a familiar irritant, woke me up. It was just after 9 a.m., and he told me, his voice laced with annoyance, that Luna had been on morning shows speaking ill of me, a calculated smear campaign. I thought I was dreaming, trapped in a nightmare, until he literally threw the blankets off me, a theatrical gesture. I scrambled to get ready, pulling on clothes, as he warned that the press would be arriving soon, their insatiable hunger for scandal already peaked. In the kitchen, Dr. Julian and Mom were already on edge, their faces etched with worry. Mom asked if I'd heard the news, her voice trembling slightly, and when I confirmed it, she wanted to know if it was true, if I was truly the villain Luna portrayed. I assured her it wasn't, my voice firm. Julian patted my shoulder, a silent gesture of support, confirming what he'd already told her, his faith unwavering. The phone rang, a shrill, insistent sound, and Mom handed it to me, her hand shaking slightly. Arthur was on the line, sounding unusually upbeat, almost gleeful. He informed me, his voice a low hum, that Luna's team had gone public, portraying her as the wronged party, the innocent victim. I was frustrated and confused. Why did she have to handle it this way? It only made a bad situation worse, escalating the conflict. I asked how he planned to handle things, my voice taut with tension, but he said he'd fill me in once I got to Leo's place, the designated war room. He advised me to wait until the media showed up and then drive out to Leo's house, so they'd follow me and avoid bothering my mom, a strategic maneuver. Leo, listening in, assured me his family was fine with it, prepared for the intrusion. Half an hour later, I arrived at Leo's, closely followed by a line of news vans that stayed respectfully off his property, their cameras poised. Inside, Leo showed me the talk show where Luna was being interviewed, her face projected onto the screen, a vision of manufactured sorrow. The host, with an artificially earnest demeanor and a sympathetic gaze, asked Luna about trouble in our marriage. When Luna's carefully constructed smile faltered, the host pushed further, questioning her about rumors of her seeing Marcus Reed from a band. Luna spoke softly, her voice barely a whisper, as the camera zoomed in on her distressed, tear-filled look. "Marcus and I are just friends," she said, her voice fragile. "He's helping me through a tough time." The interviewer, sensing blood, was eager. "What's going on in your life right now, Luna?" Luna's voice adopted a determined, almost righteous quality. "Alex has been having affairs," she revealed, the words dropping like stones. "Marcus told me, and though I was skeptical, my agent, who's also a close friend, confirmed it. Alex's infidelities are true." The interviewer pressed, a hunger for details in his eyes. "How many women, Luna?" "I'd rather not say," Luna replied, her voice choked with feigned emotion. "I confronted Alex last Wednesday, and he left. I haven't seen him since." Leo, who had been watching, his face growing increasingly grim, turned off the TV, looking frustrated despite his attempt at a smile. Arthur, on the other hand, was smiling a wide, triumphant grin. "Looks like things have changed," he said, his voice laced with satisfaction. I realized that the talk with Luna was off, completely off the table. She'd forced my hand, chosen her battlefield, and I decided to play the cards she dealt me and get her out of my life, cleanly and decisively. Arthur laid out our choices, his voice calm and strategic. "We can let her get away with this, or we can bury her." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to elaborate, to reveal his plan. "I've documented everything from the start," Arthur said, his voice now devoid of any playfulness, his eyes sharp and focused. "We have photos, videos, and sworn affidavits. After our talk yesterday, I had people digging deeper in Grand Central, pulling strings, using my old contacts. We might have more sordid details soon." I was shocked, a cold dread seeping into my bones. "There's more?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Yep," Arthur confirmed, a grim satisfaction in his tone. "She's been with several co-stars, even a couple of directors. Many in the cast and crew know, and more than a few are willing to share what they've seen, the truth behind the facade." I felt a chill. This was typical Hollywood, the casual promiscuity and veiled secrets, but I never thought my wife was part of it. Not to this extent. The pristine facade of America's sweetheart was utterly shattered, revealed as a hollow deception. "So what now?" Arthur asked, his gaze fixed on mine, waiting for my decision. I looked at Leo, who was nervously clenching his jaw, his eyes reflecting a mixture of anger and dismay. "Bury the witch," Holly shouted from the kitchen, her voice clear and decisive, a surprising burst of fury. I chuckled, a dark, humorless sound, despite the grimness of the situation. "You agree?" I asked Leo, seeking his confirmation. He nodded, his expression resolute. "Talking won't help her, Alex. Not now. You have all the answers about your marriage now. So let's discuss our options," I said to Arthur, my voice gaining a new resolve. "If we do nothing, your career takes a hit, Alex," Arthur replied, leaning forward. "New record negotiations for Wild Horse Saloon could be tough. Odyssey will see you as a liability." "Come on," I said, dismissing his concern with a wave of my hand. "This happens all the time in rock and roll. It never hurt Mick Jagger, did it?" Arthur laughed, a short, sharp sound. "True, Mick Jagger's image was always the bad boy, the rebellious rogue, but you, Alex, you've been the quiet, thoughtful poet, the good guy, the wholesome one. If you don't address this publicly, you risk destroying that carefully cultivated image. Odyssey Records will see it as a threat to millions in album sales and endorsements. Your crossover appeal is huge, Alex, appealing to a broad demographic. Rock fans might not care, they've seen it all, but the devout residents of quieter communities, the ones who buy your albums and believe in your image, they will." I glanced out at the press and fans, a sea of eager faces, and then back at Arthur, knowing he was right. "Okay, how do we handle this?" Arthur grinned, a predatory glint in his eyes, and opened his briefcase, revealing a stack of meticulously organized documents. 20 minutes later, Leo had the press set up in the pole barn, the rustic space now transformed into a makeshift press conference venue. Lights glaring, microphones bristling. I walked in, my expression carefully composed, and the reporters immediately barraged me with inquiries, a cacophony of questions. When they quieted down, I said, my voice calm and authoritative, "Same rules as yesterday. Ladies first, then the gentleman from my left to right." I pointed to the young reporter who had gone first the day before. "Sorry, you went first yesterday," I said, then addressed the smartly dressed reporter who had gone second, her face set in a determined scowl. "Mr. Sterling," she began, her voice sharp, clearly angry, either about my previous evasions or my alleged infidelities. Arthur had predicted she'd be a strong choice, a formidable opponent, and her tone suggested she was ready to pounce, to expose me. "Miss Caldwell," I replied, maintaining a pained expression, a mask of controlled grief. "Mr. Sterling, your wife told Eleanor Vance that you've ruined your marriage with multiple affairs. Is there any truth to these allegations?" I took a deep breath, attempting to steady my trembling hands, made eye contact with the reporters, letting my gaze linger on each of them, and prepared to respond. "I regret to say Luna was partially right," I began, my voice laced with sorrow. Flashes from cameras blinded me momentarily, a merciful distraction, helping me keep a pained expression. "Our marriage is indeed over, but she was wrong about me being unfaithful." I pulled out documents from a crisp manila envelope, the rustle of paper amplified by the silence, and addressed the reporter from Entertainment Insight. "Your turn, Ms. Miller. So you're saying you've never cheated on your wife?" she asked, her voice incredulous. "Not once," I replied, my voice clear and unwavering. "If Luna has any proof otherwise, I'd like to see it." Until Wednesday afternoon, when I found her with one of my oldest friends in our home, I thought my marriage was perfect, a sanctuary of love. Clearly, I was wrong. "Are you saying she was the one cheating?" asked a male reporter, his voice incredulous as cameras closed in, their lenses hungry for a reaction. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying," I confirmed, meeting his gaze directly. "Do you have proof?" demanded the initial reporter, her voice sharper now. I turned to the next man, a seasoned veteran. Do you have any proof to back up your claims? He asked the reporter, challenging me. I held up the documents, a thick stack of papers. This report from A and our investigations of Ocean View will show that Luna was not truthful this morning. In what ways was she untruthful? Asked another reporter, frantically scribbling notes. She's been having an intensely physical relationship with Marcus Reed for at least the past 2 months, I said, my voice trembling slightly, betraying the pain beneath the carefully constructed facade. I paused, savoring the moment, the hushed gasps from the reporters, embodying the role of the scorned husband. This report has dates, times, photos, and more. I continued, my voice gaining strength. And it appears this isn't the first time something like this happened in our marriage. Only the first time I became aware of it. Do you know of any others? Someone shouted from the back of the room, sensing a bigger story. I don't want to go into further details at this time, I said, placing the report back into the envelope, sealing it from their prying eyes. My manager will provide a redacted version soon for verified media outlets. I love my wife deeply and thought she loved me. I've been faithful from the start. It's a dreadful shock to find out Luna didn't feel the same. As questions flew, a renewed barrage, I raised my hands for silence, taking command of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice resonating with a quiet authority, I need to handle this privately with my family and friends. Please respect that. I left the pole barn, the flashes of the cameras momentarily blinding me, leaving Arthur to manage the press, the fallout, and the burgeoning scandal. How'd it go? Leo asked, his face etched with concern as I stepped out into the quiet sunshine. I felt exhausted, utterly drained. The fleeting fun of playing music had worn off, and the grim reality set in. My marriage was irrevocably over. My wife had repeatedly betrayed me, and the world would now be following every painful detail of the scandal, my private life laid bare. Holly hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face, her empathy a warm balm. You really deserved better, Alex, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I hugged her back, struggling to hold back my own tears, the dam of my emotions threatening to break. By noon, the press had finally dispersed, their hunger for scandal temporarily sated, and the band arrived at the driveway, their instruments gleaming in the sunlight. Finn asked if there was any news, a nervous energy in his voice, and Arthur mentioned that Quentin would be arriving in about an hour, the suspense building. Leo, ever calm, said nothing was decided yet and suggested we wait to hear what Quentin had to say, preferring to manage expectations. When Quentin arrived, his smile wider than ever, he offered a recording contract from Odyssey Records. The terms weren't great up front, far from the initial projections, but included enticing incentives for high sales, a gamble on our potential. It was almost as good as what Lead Food had been offered, which was surprising given Lead Food's established history and track record. Quentin emphasized that my involvement was crucial, the cornerstone of the deal. I asked if Lead Food was done, if my old band was truly over, and Quentin confirmed it was due to Luna's public statement and the ensuing scandal. He said even if we dropped Marcus, purged the toxic element, they wouldn't re-sign Lead Food, the brand too tarnished. But amidst the current turmoil, Quentin also pointed out that adding a new band member and dealing with songwriting would be a risk, a leap of faith for the label. Quentin then turned to Leo, his eyes alight with excitement, and told him that Odyssey wanted all 5 members of the band, Alex, Leo, Julian, Seth, and Finn, not just Alex and Leo. They believed in the unique chemistry among all of us, the raw talent and camaraderie, and saw immense potential in our unique sound, a blend of country rock and something entirely new. Though it was a risk, Quentin thought the payoff would come from the combined efforts of the full band, a synergy that transcended individual talent. Leo agreed, but said he had a condition. He wanted a 2-year commitment with 2 albums, and if things weren't working out or if it hurt his family, he wanted the option to opt out of the 3rd album, his family's well-being paramount. Julian, Seth, and Finn were all in favor, their excitement palpable, and I agreed too, my decision made. Leo made it clear that his family came first, and Quentin seemed concerned about how this might affect the terms, his business instincts kicking in. Leo proposed that if we stayed together, if the new band flourished, Quentin would get an automatic option for a 4th album on the same terms as the 3rd, with no right for Leo to withdraw a tempting offer. Quentin thought it over, his expression thoughtful, and agreed to come back after lunch for an answer. When Quentin left, the air crackling with anticipation, Holly asked about the deal, her gaze searching. Leo said it was a good offer, and she turned to me, her eyes soft, asking if I would take care of her family. I looked at everyone, Leo, Arthur, Seth, Julian, and Finn, waiting to see if I was in or out, if I would commit to this new path. Chloe stood in the kitchen doorway with her son, her expression unreadable, a silent observer to the unfolding drama. I needed air, needed to think, so I stepped outside, seeking refuge from the intensity. 10 minutes later, Chloe joined me on the deck, her presence a calming balm. She said Leo was eager to rejoin the band, his passion reignited. He'd regretted leaving Lead Food all those years ago and had been pushing to get back in with the new songs, his creative fire undimmed. I told her it all felt overwhelming, a dizzying whirlwind of change, and I needed time to process to make sense of it all. She reassured me that Leo and Holly cared and would be there for me, a steadfast support system, and the band could offer a much-needed distraction, a creative outlet. Then I asked Chloe how she'd feel if I went back on the road, if my life once again became a nomadic existence. She didn't flinch, her gaze steady, and said it didn't matter as she took my hand, her touch surprisingly firm, and led me toward the distant tree-line, away from the prying eyes. She made it clear that right now there was no us, no romantic entanglement, only me and her as separate individuals, her boundaries clear. I stayed silent, listening, and Chloe continued, explaining that while she liked me, found me intriguing, we were different people now and barely knew each other back then, our high school connection a fleeting memory. I was clinging to old memories and fantasies, she gently pointed out, of a boy I once was and a girl she never quite was. She acknowledged my interest in getting to know her better, a cautious optimism in her voice. But she wasn't going to rush into anything with me while my marriage was falling apart, while my life was in chaos. She also mentioned her son, Asher, and how she didn't want to deal with more turmoil, more instability in his life. I understood her point, her wisdom, but kissed her anyway, unable to resist the sudden impulse. Her initial shock faded as she started kissing back, a surprising warmth, but she quickly pulled away, her expression upset, her eyes flashing. She scolded me gently, but I thanked her, my voice sincere, for giving me something hopeful to look forward to, a future possibility. She softened, a small smile playing on her lips, hugged me tightly, and said this would be all she'd give me for a while, a promise of something more eventually. Back inside, everyone in the living room turned to watch as Chloe and I walked in, a subtle shift in the atmosphere. She sat on the love seat and, with a subtle gesture, left space for me next to her. I sat down, glanced at her, a silent acknowledgement, and then at the others, their faces expectant. I've made some decisions and have a few demands. I started, my voice clear and firm. Seth and Finn exchange high fives again, their excitement unrestrained, and Julian pumped his fist, clearly excited, already anticipating success. I hoped they were ready for what was coming, for the seismic shift in dynamic. I told Leo the first wouldn't be running the band. Instead, they would make decisions and then run them by me for approval, a profound change in leadership. I didn't want to be in charge or handle the decision-making anymore. The burden too heavy. Arthur and Leo seemed puzzled, their expressions perplexed by my unexpected relinquish of control. I explained that lead food had been overwhelmed by the weight of decision-making, the responsibility constantly falling on me alone, and I needed to shift that weight to share the burden. I wanted them to handle the day-to-day decisions and keep me in the loop without involving me in every detail, to trust their judgment. Leo asked if I wanted the power to veto everything, a final say. I clarified that I just wanted to approve major decisions and be informed of the direction we were taking, to have a voice in the big picture. I didn't care about minor details like dinner plans or hiring choices, the trivialities of touring. I emphasized that we needed consensus on major decisions to avoid division, to maintain unity. I wanted to be updated on decisions without being directly involved in the process, to step back from the grind. Leo and the guys agreed to the terms, their faces thoughtful. I made it clear I couldn't handle decisions right now. My mind too scattered, so they need to make them and just keep me informed. Songwriting would be separate, a collaborative effort, and everyone would have their shot at contributing, their voices heard. Julian and Seth were on board, their excitement evident, and Leo gave a hesitant nod, looking at Holly, a silent agreement passing between them. Quentin came back with basic agreements for our attorneys, and Odyssey Records was fine with Leo's terms, eager to seal the deal. My condition, the shift in leadership, stayed between Arthur and the band, a private arrangement. In just 5 tumultuous days, I'd left a major rock band and a high-profile marriage and was now diving into a new band with a fresh lineup, charting an entirely new course. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop wondering why Luna had betrayed me, the question a persistent ache, and if I'd ever be able to start fresh with someone like Chloe, a genuine, uncomplicated love. The next day, around noon, Leo and I were finalizing 2 songs we'd been working on late in a Sunday night, fueled by coffee and an undeniable creative synergy. By Monday at 11 a.m., Julian, Seth, and Finn joined us in the pole barn to work on the first song, eager to contribute. When I got back from a quick coffee run, Julian surprised us all with a fresh arrangement, transforming a slow, melancholic ballad into a high-energy rockabilly track with dual vocals and a dynamic mix of instruments, a brilliant reinvention. It was a bold, new direction, but it fit the new lineup perfectly, showcasing their diverse talents. Leo was the first to see her. I was focused on Finn and the rhythm guitar, lost in the music, when Leo's lead line ended in a jarring screech, his fingers slipping. I turned to him, annoyed, only to see his eyes shift to the barn door, his face a mask of surprise. "Hey, Alex." Luna greeted me, her voice thin and reedy. She looked terrible, her face pale, her eyes hollow, a shadow of her former glamorous self. For what Arthur told me last night before he left, and what Holly said this morning, the media was reveling in her difficulties, a public downfall. It looked like the private investigators' findings had been verified, and now new scandals, new allegations were coming out almost every hour, a relentless barrage of negative publicity. "What do you need?" I asked, my tone sharp, devoid of any warmth. "Guys," Leo said, his voice quiet, sensing the tension. "How about we head up to the house for a bit? Grab some water." Seth and Finn wasted no time leaving, practically sprinting, checking Luna out with a mix of curiosity and pity as they walked by. "If you play your cards right, you might get a chance with her," I thought, a sardonic amusement flicking through me. Once we were alone, the silence in the pole barn heavy, I sat on a stool and waited her out, my posture unyielding. I didn't try to hide my anger or disdain, letting it radiate from me, and she seemed unsure about moving from the entrance of the pole barn, as if rooted to the spot. She then whispered something, her voice barely audible, but I couldn't hear what it was. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. "I was asking if you could call off the dogs now," she said, her voice stronger, tears finally running down her face, glistening in the light. This seemed genuine, given her usual uncanny ability to conjure tears on command as an actress. "Just tell him to stop. You've made your point, Alex. I am ruined." "I didn't start this fight, Luna," I said, my voice getting louder, echoing in the barn. "And now you, the one who spread the rumor that I was the unfaithful spouse, who dragged my name through the mud, have the nerve to ask me to do something you didn't even do for me? You started this war. It wasn't my idea. Vivian made me do it," she said, her voice laced with desperation, confirming my suspicion that her ruthless manager was behind this calculated smear. "She said you'd destroy me unless I took action, unless I got ahead of the story." "That's nonsense," I roared, my patience snapping. "She must have told you that you could turn a bad situation into something good, right? Salvage your image." Luna didn't try to deny it, her gaze dropping. "You were leaving me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I replied, my voice cold. "You were cheating on me, Luna. Big difference." Her anger, a flash of her old fiery self, cut through her tears. "Oh, get over yourself," she snapped, her eyes flashing. "You already knew, didn't you? About the others?" I was stunned, completely taken aback. "How can you possibly think that? Didn't you read the tabloids?" she said, her voice rising in frustration. "They printed almost every rumor about who I was with, but you denied all of them, dismissed them as lies." I pointed out I stopped asking after a while, because I thought it was just typical nonsense, the usual Hollywood gossip, I said, my voice incredulous. She remained silent, wiping her tears with the back of her hand and avoiding eye contact, her guilt evident. "Seriously, Luna, with Marcus? You must have known I was completely unaware, that I had no idea," I said, searching her face. She nodded slowly, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "So why would you assume I knew about the others? You knew I'd be mad. That's why you kept it a secret. So you also knew I'd be angry about the other ones, right?" She nodded again, no longer trying to pretend, the charade crumbling. "I didn't care," I said, the words heavy with resignation. "How many were there, Luna? Give me a number." "Does it even matter now?" she replied, clearly afraid to answer, her voice barely audible. "You know most of them now, or at least Arthur does. He's found everything. So they're all true?" I pressed, my voice flat. She nodded, her shoulders slumping. "So that's not even all of them. That's just most of them?" I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Her expression showed she realized she had said too much, revealed too much. "Can't we move past this, Alex? If I stop now, if I give you what you want, can we get past this?" she pleaded, her voice desperate. I laughed, a raw, painful sound, and her expression turned into anger at being dismissed on my lack of mercy. "Let me ask you something, Luna," I said, my voice chillingly calm. "Imagine you find out that every time someone comes to your house, they steal something. Not just once, but dozens of times, little by little. If you found out, would you invite them back in? Would you trust them in your home again? This isn't about house guests. Alex," she shouted, her voice breaking. "This is our marriage. It's different." "Exactly. You took something far more valuable than silverware, Luna. You took my self-respect, my faith in our bond. You destroyed something I thought was perfect, something sacred. Now I'm not sure if we ever had a real marriage." I question whether you ever truly loved me, or if I was just another way to boost your image, another rung on the ladder." Her tears started flowing again, a fresh deluge. "You were never just a publicity stunt," she sobbed, her voice choked. "I've loved you since we first met, more than anyone else, Alex. You have to believe that." "That's not true," I retorted, my voice sharp. "You've always loved yourself more than you've loved me." Her reaction, a flinch, a sudden widening of her eyes, showed that I had hit a nerve, struck the undeniable truth. "So what you said on the phone earlier," she said, her voice barely audible, "that's true, isn't it? That you haven't been with anyone?" "Yeah, Luna," I confirmed, understanding what she meant, the painful truth hanging between us. "I've stayed faithful to you from the start. Completely." She nodded, wiping away more tears and sniffling. "You're right," she admitted, her voice hollow. "I'm not good enough for you. I never was." She laughed, a self-deprecating, bitter sound. "Honestly, I wouldn't stay married to me either." She came over, her movements hesitant, and lightly touched my face, her fingers cool against my skin. "Please, Alex, for old time's sake, for the sake of whatever we once had, can you have Arthur call off the dogs, stop the media assault, and the divorce will go through quickly, according to the prenups? No lengthy legal battles, no more attacks in the media, no more public humiliation for either of us." She smiled faintly, a desperate plea in her eyes, and nodded. "I swear. And what about my things from the house?" I asked, my voice flat. "They're in my car," she answered, pointing towards the driveway, a silver Escalade parked behind mine. I thought over, weighing the pros and cons. Why not? I figured this would wrap things up quickly and with minimal fuss. No need to return to Grand Central, to face that haunted house again, and I could be done with her with just a few signatures, a clean break. Most importantly, it seemed like her public image had already been sufficiently damaged, her carefully constructed world crumbling, and Marcus was now just a distant memory, a minor player in her downfall. So yes, maybe I was being a bit lenient, letting her off easy, but ending this quickly and moving on with my life seemed worth it, a fair trade for peace. "All right," I said, my voice firm. "We file for divorce right away, citing irreconcilable differences. I want to see the proposed settlement papers by next Monday, the terms finalized, and then it's all over. Can you manage that, Luna?" She hugged me, a desperate, clinging embrace. "I promise," she said, her voice muffled against my chest. "If you handle this, I'll call off the dogs. I'll make Vivian stop." I told her. She pulled away from the hug, her eyes searching mine. "Do you think you can call them off now? The sooner I get the paperwork, the sooner Arthur will back off," I replied, my expression unyielding. She wasn't thrilled, but her expression suggested she was getting a better deal than she expected, a last-minute reprieve. "Thanks, Alex," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. She leaned in and kissed me lightly on the cheek, a final, ghost of a touch. "And Alex," I looked at her one last time, a final gaze at the woman who had been my wife. "Yes, Luna, I'm truly sorry," she said, her eyes filling with tears again. Genuine this time, raw and unfiltered. "I didn't mean to hurt you, and I still love you." "I'm sorry too," I replied, the words surprisingly easy to say, deciding to call off the dogs now and deal with any issues later if she didn't keep her promise, a calculated risk. She kept her word, though. The next morning, a courier delivered the settlement documents, crisp and legal, sealing the end of our marriage. So that's the tumultuous 5-day odyssey that reshaped my life. Marcus went bankrupt about 18 months ago, his lavish lifestyle catching up with him. He sold his fancy houses, his illusions of grandeur, and now lives in a smaller Ocean View place, doing studio work and occasionally seen with a starlet, a shadow of his former self. Owen, our drummer, left music behind after making some astute financial ventures in tech. He's now living a quiet, fulfilling life in Scotland, painting landscapes and golfing, truly content. He's shown interest in maybe joining us on an album for some integrated drumming akin to a renowned blues rock ensemble, a guest appearance perhaps. Adam Bouma, our former lead guitarist, is now our producer, a brilliant transformation. He's doing well, working closely with Leo and Julian on great new tunes and producing other acts in Harmony City and Grand Central, his ear for talent unmatched. He's glad to be off the road, finding his true calling behind the mixing board. Luna's career plummeted following our separation, a rapid descent. She was dropped from her show when viewership ratings crashed, and though her divorce was quick and the press was hushed, her reputation took an irreparable hit. She now appears sporadically in minor parts, but has lost her beloved national darling image. The public tired of her manufactured drama. Seth ended up with her, oddly enough, and he told me they spent the night talking about me, even during their more intimate moments, a detail that still makes me laugh, despite his embarrassment when he shared it. The Wild Horse Saloon in Nevada tried to sue us over their name, claiming trademark infringement, but we refused to back down, our legal team formidable. Meanwhile, Julian, with his quirky charm, kept bringing his basset hound, General Wellington, to practice. We thought it would make a great band name, unique and memorable, though we weren't naming ourselves after the Confederate general, just the dog. 5 months later, General Wellington's debut album, A New Dawn, was released to rave reviews. It sold 8 million copies with 2 #1 rock singles and 3 top 10 country hits. A crossover success that defied expectations. Our follow-up album, Twilight Promenade, released with our first major tour, went diamond, selling 11 million copies in just over a year. The tour sold out before it even started, a testament to our burgeoning popularity, and the reviews were even better than for the album, hailing us as the next big thing. Leo's managing everything well, his calm demeanor a steady anchor, bringing Holly and the girls on tour in their own bus. A family on the road. I sometimes join them to work on songs, but with all the noise from the kids, it's hard to get much done. A happy chaos. So the kids, Leo's daughters, plus Asher, Chloe's son, and young Arthur. Arthur, as you saw in People magazine, was said to be born 10 months ago to Alex and Chloe Sterling. The local success story, a heartwarming tale of small-town romance. But that was all a publicity stunt orchestrated brilliantly by Arthur Thorne and the team, a carefully crafted narrative to boost album sales and public interest. The real story is a bit more complicated, more nuanced. It took almost 8 months after that weekend for Chloe to agree to a proper date, her cautious nature holding her back, and even longer for her to accept my proposal, a true test of patience. Chloe has since been keeping me on my toes, her quiet strength and unexpected wit constantly surprising me. And I'm hoping she keeps surprising me with new ways to keep things exciting, our life together an ongoing adventure. We live close to Leo, Holly, and their kids, maintaining a normal life in Meadowbrook, where people know us well, respect our privacy, and aren't swayed by our fame, treating us just like their neighbors. As for Arthur, my spectral guide, I'll save his full story for another time, but he's forgiven me for slamming down the phone that last time and sent his best.